And we're going to go right to our next reader, who is Nisha Missir. She is a 19, soon to be 20-year-old education major and also a survivor. The piece she'll be reading today is actually entitled The Joker and the Thief. Please welcome her to the podium.
I was originally going to read a nonfiction piece entitled The Devil Behind the Green Gate, but I was censored by my family. They didn't appreciate that I would be reading that, and it involves them. So I'll be reading another piece, an excerpt from a longer piece of work that I'm writing on. It's based on exaggerated true events, and it's titled The Joker and the Thief. Sure, it's a little comical trying to use a stethoscope to try and open a safe lock, but what can I say? Whatever works, works. I've been in this gig for quite a number of years, 5 to be exact. I've picked through so many locks and broken so many windows that I've gotten this all down to a science. There has yet to be a door that I can't go through. It's a good thing then that my lucky coat has so many pockets to hold all my equipment and all the stuff I snatch. I've been lucky thus far, not to have been caught. I was almost caught a few minutes ago by a neighbor in this rinky-dink apartment building, but I told her that I was the resident's cousin. Quick thinking, eh? Now that I'm done going through this place, I'll go down to the 3rd floor and go through one more place before calling it a day. It's starting to get a little late. Most people get home by 5 o'clock anyway. As I made my way down and into the 3rd floor hallway, I noticed some guy leaving his apartment. He was about my height, maybe 5'8", maybe a bit shorter, and had a bit of a shifty-eyed look to him as he locked his door. Looks like he doesn't want anyone rummaging through his stuff. Let's fix that, shall we? He passed by me and gave me a funny look. This guy doesn't know who he's dealing with. He headed down a creaky set of stairs as I approached his door. I made sure the coast was clear, and it was, and proceeded to pick the lock. At first, my lockpick got stuck inside the lock, almost as if this wasn't the first time someone's tried this. After a few seconds of struggling, I was rewarded with a turned doorknob and an open door. I slowly closed the door behind me as I went inside. The whole place had a foul stench to it. I was starting to wonder if this guy was trying to get people to die from this. But I digressed. I started walking around to find beer bottles, cigarette butts, and the occasional cockroach, which would better fit a scene at a haunted mansion. As I kept walking through the creaky wooden floor of this rundown apartment, I could have sworn that I heard a mumbling sound. I thought at first that perhaps it was the floor, if only it weren't for the distinct sounds of a person. I continued walking around to see if I could find anything as I made my way into the bedroom. I looked out the window and saw a nice-looking flower bed in a very small, near claustrophobic courtyard with several alleyways going outward. I had a funny little thought in my head and thought, wouldn't it be funny if someone landed on that? I chuckled a bit. My chuckle turned into a gasp as soon as I turned my head around. I turned my head left and saw something I thought I'd never see. I saw a small girl, about 4 to 5 years old, tied up next to the closet with duct tape around her mouth, wearing a white dress and no underpants with a belt next to her. As soon as I saw her, I jumped back and fell backwards, banging my head against the wall. My jaw dropped straight to the ground as I looked to the young girl's eyes filled with tears. At that point, I didn't know what to do. Should I save her? But then again, I don't know what went on here. As I stood there and kept thinking like a dope, the girl continued making muffled cries for help. Forget it, I thought. I already invaded this house. I might as well. I took the duct tape off her mouth and was immediately greeted with, "Please don't hurt me." My hands shook, but I slapped some sense into them. I took out the switchblade from my back pocket and cut the rope she was tied up with. "Get away from me," she said in a frightened tone as she scooted away from me and went up to a wall. "I'm not here to hurt you. I actually just came here to steal some of your stuff. But given your circumstances, it would seem that it's much more viable goal for us to vacate the premises and get you to a secure location free from this oppressive environment," I told her. "Huh?" she said in a confused voice, turning her head slightly while squinting her eyes. "I'm busting you out of here." "Oh, why didn't you just say that?" Right. But first, let's get some pants on, okay? She gave me an assuring nod and went into a small box and pulled out some undies. This has got to be the most awkward, angry, and strange moment of my life. And I've seen a lot of weird crap. We started walking toward the door and quickly saw the door open. The man from before walked back in, probably forgetting something. "What the hell are you doing here?" he said in a detached voice. "I'd like to know the same thing," I replied. "And what are you doing out of your quarters?" he asked as he looked down onto the girl. She cowered in fear and ran away. It was best she did that, because not a second after she did, I lunged forward and punched him right in the jaw. He fell back but appeared unscathed. He ran towards me and knocked me down. I looked at him, he looked down at me, and sent a barrage of fists my way. I tried to move my head as much as I could. I blocked my face to reduce any pain I might endure. I noticed a certain pattern in his punches and saw a window of opportunity. I spit in his face. He yelled and tried to wipe it off as I took advantage and flung him off of me. I staggered a little bit as I tried to get back. I staggered a little bit, but I was able to move. Once he cleared his face, he tried to punch me again, but I was able to grab hold of him, duck down, and elbow him in the throat. He grabbed his throat to reduce the pain, but I put one hand on his head and one hand on his shoulder and slammed him into the ground. He went crashing. I tried to look for the little girl, but couldn't find her. Then I heard a scream. I followed the screams to find her in the kitchen with about 3 to 4 cockroaches on her head and back. I flicked them off and picked her up and started going for the door. I left the kitchen and made a turn and saw the man on the feet with his gun drawn. Immediately after I turned the corner, he fired but thankfully missed. Then I had a brain fart. I ran into the bedroom and put the young girl down and stared her in the eye and asked her, "Do you trust me?" "What?" I said, "Do you trust me?" "Mm-hmm," she said after a second of delay and a reassuring nod. I quickly faced the mirror and picked up the girl, shielded her with my coat, and crashed straight into the window. The man saw this and tried to shoot at us as we fell down. Seconds later felt like hours, and we made our descent, desperately praying that we didn't get stabbed with glass. We landed smack on top of a bed of flowers. I smirked as I enjoyed this small moment of irony. As I opened my jacket to ask the girl if she was okay, she told me she was bruised and couldn't move her arm. As we started moving, we ran into one of the many alleyways exiting the courtyard. Luckily, there was an ambulance nearby, but not for the reasons you might think. As we ran towards the ambulance, the man began to make chase and yelled, "That SOB took my girl!" "What? Get him," said the driver to his companion. This wasn't good, as now we had 3 people giving us chase. The 2 ambulance operators exited their vehicle and began to go after me, but I quickly made waste to them. I kicked one in the stomach, picked him up by the leg, and swung him into his friends. With both of them knocked out, we went inside the ambulance and tried to get some first aid. I studied the girl's arm and noticed some lacerations across the entire length, as well as a dislocated elbow. As long as it's not broken, it can be fixed. I took some alcohol and strings and needles to stitch up the lacerations, as well as a bandage, some wood, and a cloth for the elbow. As I was about to heal the young girl up, we were greeted with a nice little hello from our friend from before in the form of a piece of lead flying straight towards us. I quickly jumped down with the girl in hand, turning to make sure I covered her, and took a shot to the shoulder. With a great yell that frightened the girl even more than she was already, if that was even possible, I quickly tried to console my shoulder, but couldn't because I could hear footsteps. With the back of my head facing the exit of the ambulance truck, I couldn't tell what was going on, but that terrified look in her eyes told me everything. The footsteps grew louder and louder as more and more sweat ran down my back, with chills going through my spine. I looked around to see if I could find anything to use against him. Each second I wasted was one step closer to death, and one step closer to an unforeseen fate for her, so I had to make haste. I looked around and eureka! I found a scalpel, probably used, and went to reach for it. He must have seen it, however, and shot at my hand. Thankfully, this man had horrid aim because he missed, but I still retreated my arm. He went on top of me with his knees on my wrist so I couldn't move and with his gun in my mouth. Who do you think you are, coming into people's humble abodes and taking their things? Do you get a kick out of it? Do you think you can get away with stuff like this? Well, let me just tell you this. You think that little piece of crap over there? She's my little mistress, not yours. And there will be hell to pay if you think that's going to change, he said with a breath that smelled of raw sulfur and garlic. I tried to mumble something, but nothing came through. Then what seemed like out of nowhere, the little girl stabbed the man right in the ribcage with the very same scalpel. Of course, had his finger been on the trigger, I wouldn't be here telling you this little tale, now would I? The man shrugged off of me as I followed through with a kick to the face. I put all the first aid stuff in my pockets and carried the girl with me. I tried to run, but I couldn't. I looked around for a solution and saw someone getting off their bike. I kicked him off the bike, put the girl in front of me, and revved the engine. We screeched down the highway and didn't look back. To be continued. That's it. Thank you.